welcome back. Before we get to the son of legendary football coach Joe Paterno, I want you to watch a little bit of Joe Paterno.
It seemed as if Paterno's been around since the word was created. He started at Penn State when Truman was president, and a pound of coffee cost $1. With those legendary Coke bottle glasses, Coach may not see like he used to or move as well as he'd like, but Paterno's response is razor sharp whenever anyone raises the R word, retirement, after the season.
No, but I'm going to propose you retire after this one.
All right, folks. Jay Paterno is here with us, as I mentioned, the son of Joe Paterno, and he has a book. You have to read this, and you have to get it. Get it now. Holidays will be here before you know it. If you're a father, get it for your son, or get it for yourself, or wife, get it for your husband. And it's up on the screen now. You see it there, Paterno Legacy, Enduring Lessons from the Life and Death of My Father. And let's say hello to Jay Paterno. Thank you so much for coming in.
Great to be here.
I was such a fan of your father, as millions around the world were and are, I should add. 45 years at Penn State, 5 undefeated seasons, 2 national championships. When you were watching that, and when you think of your dad, what do you think of first?
I just kind of miss him. I mean, he was, I was fortunate. I grew up in his house, had him as a father. Saw him as a grandfather to my 5 kids, worked with him for 17 years, played on the team with him. So, I mean, I've seen him from every angle, and there's not a day doesn't go by that I don't think about him or think about something he taught me, and seeing that and hearing his voice is always nice.
Growing up with him, playing for him, coaching with him, could you ever have imagined that it would end the way it did with the Sandusky scandal and the health problems in proximity to the Sandusky scandal and the fallout at Penn State from it all?
No, I mean, I can remember as it was happening, a good friend of mine, I would say, boy, if you turned this into a Hollywood script and gave it to somebody, they would tell you it was too over the top, there's no way this could happen. And every time something new would happen or something else would happen, you just scratch your head and say, how is this even possible? But, it is what it is.
I'll ask it this way, well, was your father treated fairly?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, why, motive, those kind of things, agendas, I don't want to get into that. And I don't in the book because I wasn't in the room when they made some of the decisions that they made, so I don't want to be unfair to them.
You're talking about the Penn State people?
Yeah, the administration.
Yes, okay.
Administration of Penn State and the Board of Trustees. I certainly would give them would give them the benefit of the doubt of not trying to prejudge or assign motive to them as to why they did what they did. Same thing with Louis Freeh when he issued his report. Why he wrote it the way he did, I don't know.
Was that a fair report?
Not even close. Not even close, and I said that without hesitation. And Louis Freeh, by his own admission,
never spoke to a bunch of people.
He interviewed one person,
yeah.
And that was 5 days before the report came out. Never spoke to me. I went and spent an hour and 50 minutes with them roughly in December of 2011. And, the thing about it, people have said, well, he's the former FBI director and he's got this great reputation. I've said many times Richard Jewell would probably not agree with that. And he was assigned, here's a guy that was actually a hero who was turned into a scapegoat and blamed and was investigated for a while and really had his life turned upside down.
The Olympic Park bombing at the time,
absolutely.
In Atlanta. You're talking about the administrators, okay, but when I asked, was your father treated fairly, I guess it was a multi-pronged question. No, that's fine. Yeah. I wasn't clear. Was he treated fairly by anybody in the media, the fans, the NCAA, in the long run, the school? I mean, did anybody treat him fairly? Do you believe legally?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that obviously what the NCAA did to Penn State, I think, was absolutely wrong. In fact, last Thursday they issued guidelines as to how sexual assault reporting should be done on college campuses in athletic departments. And Penn State and my father followed that to the T. Literally, it was don't investigate, don't follow up, don't try and manage any investigations, report it outside the athletic department and let that run its course, which is exactly what Penn State did. So I'm hoping that the NCAA will say, okay, Penn State did the right way. I'm hoping they'll say that Joe Paterno did the right way, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Did your father know anything?
No. I mean, he received, what I hope people understand, and the first chapter in the book, the first full chapter in the book after the prologue is called The Elephant in the Room. And the reason was I wanted to address these things head on. And what people have to understand is, because there are a lot of misperceptions, and I understand why, because a lot of things were reported incorrectly. So I addressed that right off the bat. And really, in 2001, Joe is essentially a supervisor of a coach who comes to him and says, I think I saw something, made me uncomfortable, regarding Jerry Sandusky, who was a former employee at the time. Joe, by his own admission, said, I don't know how to handle these things, consults university policy, follows university policy, which is formulated by state law. And, now, that's all he knew. And as far as he knew, was investigated and found that there was nothing there.
So why? Why did this happen? Why was your father made into this figure who was forced to, step down, the whole thing, the statue gone? Why did all this happen? Was it the media that perpetuated this in the world in which we live in today? You and I were talking about this before we went on the air, the media frenzy, how a story happens, and if the media has an agenda, they get that agenda out, and in this case, it resulted in your father's downfall, in a sense. Do you buy that, or was there something else?
Well, I don't know if necessarily it's a media agenda, but I think the world we live in now, with for-profit media, it is more profitable to be first than right. So the pressure to be first, and I understand it. That's not to judge anybody. That's not to throw stones at anybody. That's the pressure that people are under. So a lot of people went on the air very early in the story with things that weren't accurate. And unfortunately, in the world we live in, if something's repeated often enough, it takes on the aura of truth. So suddenly it became, well, Joe knew, Joe covered up, Joe had, none of which was true, and all of which we now know to be completely false. Louis Freeh issued his report on the day that All-Star break, where there are no games, no baseball games, no basketball games, no football games, nothing. So what he asserted in that report, which was incorrect, his incorrect assertions in that report got repeated over and over and over and over again, and people believed them. I think the most important thing that I would say to people when they ask me about my dad is this. Louis Freeh, by his own admission, did not have access to all the people and all the evidence, did not have subpoena power. The prosecutors in this case, who had subpoena power, who interviewed everybody involved in this case, came back and have said repeatedly that Joe was honest, he was forthcoming, he was cooperative, and more importantly, that he was in no way involved in an attempt to conceal or cover up anything Jerry Sandusky did. And to me, that's the end of the story.
How did your father handle this behind closed doors with the family? Did this, in your view, contribute? I mean, I know he had the illness, but did this kill him? I mean, did this eat out of? How did he handle this on a day-by-day basis as it unfolded until he passed?
Well, he had a long-range view of this, and he kept saying, look, the most important thing is that we get this right for the victims, and we get the truth for them, and we get the truth as it relates to Penn State. That's the most important thing, and that's all he really wanted. It was never about him. And, even several weeks later, after he'd been fired, he had his 85th birthday party, and he's got cancer, and all these things are going on, and he says to me, and he says to all of us, and I put in a book, he said, what do I get to complain about? In the grand scheme of life, I lost the opportunity to coach a couple of games, but I've got 5 kids that are all healthy and alive. I've got 17 grandkids that are all healthy. Keep it in perspective. And I'm looking, going, I'm mad. I mean, how can you be this calm? But, he had long-range perspective. And he was so focused on beating the cancer, that was his main thing.
When they talked about, and the talk first started about taking the statue down and and all the honors that he had accumulated, changing this, changing that. What was it like at that point?
Well, it was just another step in an onslaught.
Because as bad as Sandusky was the criminal, he was the accused, he was the perpetrator, he was the man standing trial. Yet they were attacking Joe Paterno.
Well, Joe moved the social media needle. So if you write a story and you talk about Joe Paterno, the needle moves, and you get hits and you get clicks. And I'll give you an example. At the end of November, New York Times sends out an email. I talk about it in the book. They send out an email to all the subscribers, and in the email about how they handled this case, in the body of the email, they mentioned Joe Paterno 4 times. They mentioned Penn State 6 times, or vice versa. I don't have the exact number, but Jerry Sandusky's name didn't appear in the article at all. Saturday Night Live, the Saturday night after my dad is fired, they do a bit on Weekend Update. They mention my dad's name 7 times. They mention Penn State 6 times. They don't even mention Jerry Sandusky. So, I mean, he moves the needle.
So the media saw that Joe Paterno, when you say moves the needle, sells papers, gets viewers, gets social media hits.
And so does Penn State.
And so your father became a victim. Do you believe your father was a victim?
No, I just think it's just the way the world is. I don't think it was an intent to victimize anybody, and I don't want to use the word victim because really the people...
Well, I don't mean in the sense as a victims, but I mean it sounds like he was a vehicle then for the media outlets to gain, whether it's viewers or listeners or whatever.
I think that's true to an extent, and I think, like I said, a lot of it has to do with the model that we have now, and it's a matter of. Even during the week when this was all happening, my dad was the only person in any kind of leadership capacity at the university who had to go to his office and home, and he knew where his office was. So every time he left the house, video, and he became the B-roll, and he became the visual of the story.
We got less than a minute. It's not fair. What do you want people to know most about your dad that maybe they don't know? Or
I think he was an educator. First and foremost, football was what he did. It did not define him. And I think the thing about this book is whether you are a father, a son, whether you are in business, whether you are in any kind of leadership position, there are great lessons that come through in this book. Even during his most trying days, he stayed true to who he was. And I think that's what's going to come through in this book. And I hope people don't look at this book as just a Sandusky book or a football book, but more of a leadership book.
Is there a need to clear his name?
Well, to me, he didn't commit a crime that needs to be cleared. But I think there's an element of people that need to know the truth about what really happened.
This book will help go to
Absolutely.
that end. Paterno Legacy, Enduring Lessons from the Life and Death of My Father by Jay Paterno. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure meeting you. Okay, folks, we will be back with the President and Executive Director of the New York Civil Rights Coalition, my friend Michael Myers, right here. Don't go away.